Everyone knows King Charles was cheating on Princess Diana with Camilla. Do you think Mrs. Parker Bowles was a factor in the breakdown of your marriage? Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded. That scandal shook the entire world, but what most people don't know is that there was an even bigger betrayal, not just to Diana but also to Camilla. Yes, a secret so shocking it is just now coming to light. So, what was Charles really hiding? Could this be the real reason behind his divorce from Diana? When Princess Diana walked down the aisle of St. Paul's Cathedral on July 29, 1981, it seemed like a fairy tale come to life. The world watched in awe as the shy 20-year-old married the dashing Prince Charles. But in reality, cracks in their relationship were already forming, cracks that would widen into a full-blown chasm over the years. It is no secret that Diana and Charles's marriage was troubled from the start. While Diana was head over heels in love, Charles had other feelings and other priorities. During this interview, Charles could not even admit that he loved her. The truth was that Charles was still deeply in love with Camilla Parker Bowles, the woman he had dated years earlier. Even before their engagement, Charles had told friends he was not sure if marrying Diana was the right choice. And yet he went ahead with it, pressured by the royal family's expectations and his duty to produce heirs. Diana herself sensed something was wrong even before the wedding. Famously, she discovered a bracelet Charles had commissioned for Camilla, engraved with the initials F and G. This was a private joke between Charles and Camilla that stood for their nicknames, Fred and Gladys. For Diana, this was a red flag, but she pushed her doubts aside because she was determined to make things work. Despite the challenges, Diana tried desperately to save her marriage. She threw herself into royal duties, hoping that their shared responsibilities might bring them closer. She even supported Charles in his endeavors and worked tirelessly to gain the approval of the royal family. But none of these efforts worked for her. She was often met with indifference or, worse, coldness from Charles. Charles's relationship with Camilla never truly ended, and Diana knew it. She later admitted to confronting both Charles and Camilla about the affair. But even as Diana fought to salvage their relationship, Charles showed almost no interest in repairing the marriage. Instead, he leaned more and more on Camilla for emotional support. Over the years, Diana started to realize that she had to do something else if she wanted to save her marriage. So she tried to connect with Charles on a personal level. This people's princess planned romantic getaways and even sought counseling, but her efforts were one-sided, which is why they never worked. No matter how hard she tried, Charles's focus was entirely elsewhere, so there was no way Diana's efforts could have saved the marriage. To truly understand why they even got married in the first place, you have to go back to the beginning. How did Charles and Diana, 2 people who seemed so mismatched, end up together? Charles and Diana met in 1977 when Diana was just 16 years old. At the time, Charles was actually dating her older sister, Sarah. That's right, Sarah Spencer, not Diana, was initially Charles's romantic interest. But when Charles met the shy and charming teenager, he couldn't help but take notice. Their relationship didn't progress until years later. In 1980, Diana and Charles reconnected at a mutual friends event. By then, Diana was looking like a suitable bride to Charles. She was aristocratic, kind, and most importantly for the royal family, young and untainted by scandal. The royal family saw her as the perfect future queen. But while Diana may have checked all the boxes for a royal bride, she was not the woman Charles truly wanted. That woman was Camilla. You see, before Diana ever entered the picture, Charles and Camilla were already a thing. They met in the early 1970s and quickly fell in love. Camilla, with her wit and charm, attracted Charles in a way no one else ever had. But their romance was cut short when Charles left for naval duty. By the time he returned, Camilla had married Andrew Parker Bowles. This was a decision that would haunt both her and Charles for decades. Even after her marriage, Camilla remained Charles's top priority. They stayed close friends, and their emotional connection stayed just the same. By the time Charles married Diana, his feelings for Camilla had not faded. In fact, they had only grown stronger. For Diana, it was like she was married to a person who was already committed to another woman. This is why Charles and Diana's marriage was rocky from the start. But did this secret affair stay secret for long? Absolutely not. The big betrayal, Charles and Camilla's relationship, was the worst-kept secret in royal history. Everyone in the royal circle knew Charles never got over her. He might have put a ring on Diana's finger, but his heart was permanently parked with Camilla. And it was not just some casual emotional affair, these two were in deep. How deep, you ask? Deep enough for Charles to tell her he wanted to be her tampon. That's right. No matter how disgusting that sounds, the current King of England said this to his mistress. This wish he had was part of the infamous phone call that got leaked and turned into one of the biggest royal scandals of the century. Let's backtrack a bit. This juicy little nugget was known as Camillagate or Tampongate, which exploded in 1993. A private, steamy phone conversation between Charles and Camilla was recorded and leaked to the press. Then the world got a chance to listen to their unique pillow talk. It was embarrassing, mortifying, and very much public. The scandal was everywhere, newspapers, magazines, you name it. For Diana, it was the ultimate humiliation. Everyone now knew just how deeply Charles and Camilla were involved, and Diana was left to deal with the fallout. Let's not sugarcoat it, this was the kind of scandal that brought down public respect for the royal family. People were outraged. How could Charles do this to Diana, the beloved people's princess? For Diana, it was like having her worst nightmare splashed across every tabloid. And it was not like she didn't already know about the affair, she had been dealing with it for years. But to have the proof broadcast to the entire world was a next-level betrayal. Now let's talk about Diana during all this. She was suffering, plain and simple. She was battling anorexia, a condition made worse by the constant rejection from Charles and the constant pressure of royal life. Diana even admitted that her eating disorder was a way to cope with the pain. She felt unloved, unwanted, and utterly alone. And who could blame her? Her husband was emotionally unavailable, and the entire royal institution seemed more concerned with preserving their image than helping her. There were moments when Diana tried to fight back, desperate for Charles's attention. One of the most shocking times was when she threw herself down the stairs while pregnant with William. Diana confessed that she did it as a cry for help, hoping Charles, or someone, anyone, would take notice. But she never got the attention nor the care she was hoping for. And then there were the boys. When William was born, Diana thought maybe, just maybe, this could bring her and Charles closer. For a while, it seemed to work. But when Harry came along, things soured again. Rumor has it Charles had been hoping for a daughter, and when Harry arrived, he was, let's just say, less than thrilled. Diana must have felt like she could not win, no matter what she did. By the late 80s, Diana had enough. She was done being the silent, suffering wife. She started taking control of her story. And let's not forget her bombshell interview. In 1995, she revealed everything to the public. This iconic line was also said by Diana during the same interview. By this time, everyone in the public and the royal house knew that Diana was no longer willing to play the part of the dutiful wife while Charles carried on with Camilla. But what pushed Diana over the edge? It was not the affair, it was the complete lack of care, love, and respect. After years of trying to fix a broken marriage, she realized it was beyond repair. Charles was not just emotionally absent, he was blatantly devoted to another woman. Diana had tried everything, counseling, confronting Camilla, and even working harder at royal duties to win Charles's approval, but nothing worked. When the Camillagate scandal erupted, it was the final straw. Diana was publicly humiliated on a global scale. By 1992, Diana and Charles officially separated, and by 1996, their divorce was finalized. Diana walked away from the marriage, but not without leaving a lasting impression. Her decision to speak out, live her truth, and break free from a toxic relationship turned her into a symbol of strength and resilience. Charles, on the other hand, saw his reputation take a serious hit. Once again, the world didn't forget about Tampongate or how he treated Diana. Even now, decades later, those scandals still haunt his legacy. As Diana closed the chapter on her broken marriage, it seemed like she was ready to take control of her life. But the drama was far from over. The conspiracy theories began. Let us tell you about a rumor that has been whispered about for years, that Prince Harry might not be Charles's son. Even Harry himself addressed it in his book Spare. Why? Because the resemblance between Harry and James Hewitt, Diana's former lover, is just too uncanny for some people to ignore. Let's look at the timeline to confirm this. Diana admitted to having an affair with Hewitt, but it supposedly began after Harry was born. So, biologically, it does not add up. Still, the rumor persisted. To make matters worse, Charles didn't exactly squash those whispers. His distant relationship with Harry only fueled the speculation. James Hewitt, with his red hair and charming demeanor, became a convenient target for such rumors. Diana wasn't shy about showing her discontent with Charles, and people connected the dots, no matter how shaky those dots were. Harry, meanwhile, grew up with this cloud of speculation hanging over his head. This lingering doubt about Harry's parentage may have played a role in Charles and Harry's strained relationship. While William seemed to have a closer bond with their father, Harry always appeared to be on the outskirts. Maybe it was because he was the spare, or maybe, just maybe, this persistent rumor contributed to the icy relationship. Diana noticed this imbalance, and it only made her more protective of Harry. She saw how distant Charles was and began to recognize the toxicity in her marriage more clearly. By this point, Diana was done playing the dutiful royal. Her marriage was over, and her focus shifted to her sons and carving out her own identity. But her independence came with a cost. The royal family was not thrilled about her public candor, her rebellious spirit, or the fact that she was stealing the spotlight from them. Then came the ultimate scandal, her affairs. Let's be clear, Diana didn't just sit back and let Charles have all the fun. She had her share of romances, too. James Hewitt was not the only one. Rumors swirled about Diana's relationships with other men, including heart surgeon Hasnat Khan and, later, Dodi Fayed. The press had a field day with these stories. But for Diana, these relationships were about one thing, reclaiming her power. She was not going to let the royals or Charles dictate her happiness anymore. Still, her newfound independence didn't sit well with everyone, especially not the royal family. By the time the divorce was finalized, Diana had firmly established herself as a force to be reckoned with, but it was clear that the drama in her life was far from over. 1996 marked a turning point. Diana was no longer bound by royal protocol, but she was still a threat to the monarchy's pristine image. Her popularity was soaring, and she was using her platform to speak out on causes that mattered to her. She was outshining the royals, and they knew it. And then, just as Diana seemed to be hitting her stride, tragedy struck. On August 31, 1997, Diana died in a car crash in Paris. She was only 36. Now, here is what we know: Diana was being chased by paparazzi when her car crashed in the Pont de l'Alma tunnel. The driver, who was later found to be intoxicated, lost control. Dodi Fayed, Diana's boyfriend at the time, also died. It seemed like a tragic accident, but was it? For years, conspiracy theories have swirled around what really happened that night. Some people believe the crash was not an accident at all. They think it was a calculated move to silence Diana once and for all. Why? Because she was too outspoken, too independent, and frankly, too much of a threat to the royal family. Diana herself fueled these theories in a letter she wrote before her death. She claimed she felt unsafe and feared that someone was plotting to remove her. This is too big to be disregarded as a coincidence, but it was indeed disregarded, which only makes this all more suspicious. For conspiracy theorists, this was all the proof they needed. They argue that Diana's increasing outspokenness and her relationship with Dodi, a man from a wealthy non-British family, made her a liability to the monarchy. Was Charles involved? Some theorists think so. After all, Diana's death conveniently ended the constant PR nightmare for the royal family. No more messy divorces, no more explosive interviews, no more tabloid drama. It was as if all the problems tied to Diana disappeared overnight. But there is no hard evidence to back up these claims. Official investigations ruled the crash an accident caused by reckless driving and the paparazzi's pursuit. Still, the timing, the circumstances, and Diana's own fears make it hard for people to accept the official narrative. Now, the question is, was Diana's death part of a larger betrayal? Did her former husband play any role in her tragic end, directly or indirectly? Well, let's see who was the murderer. First, there is the theory that Diana's relationship with Dodi Fayed was a major threat to the monarchy. Let's not forget, Dodi was not just Diana's boyfriend. He was also the son of Mohammed al-Fayed, an Egyptian billionaire, and a Muslim. The idea of the future king having a Muslim stepfather and possibly half-siblings outside the royal lineage would not have sat well with the traditionalists in Buckingham Palace. Some speculate that the royal family or individuals within its circle saw Diana's relationship with Dodi as a problem they needed to resolve. The idea of a modern, progressive Diana raising her sons with liberal, non-traditional values was already unsettling for the royals. And then, if it is a high-profile romance with someone like Dodi, the royals must have just seen it as the final straw, a threat that could tarnish their image and disrupt the carefully created royal narrative they fought so hard to maintain. Diana had become a thorn in their side. After her divorce from Charles, she was no longer under their control. She was dating who she wanted, saying what she wanted, and doing what she wanted. And the public loved her for it. Diana was overshadowing the very institution she once represented, and that didn't sit well with everyone. This is why they are silenced. To prove this point, let's talk about the evidence, or lack thereof. First, there is the matter of the car crash itself. Diana's driver was reportedly drunk at the time, but some argue that the blood sample used to determine his intoxication could have been tampered with. There are claims that the sample didn't match Paul's blood type. This raises questions about the integrity of the investigation. Then, there is the question of the paparazzi. Yes, they were chasing Diana's car that night, but were they entirely to blame? Witnesses have reported seeing a mysterious white Fiat Uno in the tunnel at the time of the crash. This was never identified or located. Maybe this car model played a role in forcing Diana's car off the road. Then, when we look at the medical attention both received, look at how different it was. Now, Diana was alive immediately after the crash but succumbed to her injuries hours later. Critics argue that the response time from emergency services was suspiciously slow, especially considering how high-profile the victim was. Maybe, just maybe, they could have saved her if they provided her with the best care. Despite investigations concluding that Diana's death was an accident, these unanswered questions have kept the conspiracy theories alive. People want answers. They still want to know if it was the monarchy or some powerful individuals who saw Diana as a threat to their interests. The truth is we may never know what really happened, but it is hard to ignore the holes in the official story. Diana was a global icon, a humanitarian, and a voice for change. Her death silenced someone who had become too powerful for some, leaving behind endless questions and suspicions. Maybe Charles should have never dragged an innocent soul like Diana into this mess in the first place. Now, tell us, what do you think is the real secret behind Diana's death?